There is one ingredient hiding in almost every processed food in your kitchen right now. You have been eating it every single day, without knowing it, without choosing it, and it is doing one specific thing inside your body, keeping your belly fat locked in place. Regardless of everything else you do right. Not sugar, not carbs, not calories. One ingredient. And when you remove it, something measurable happens inside your body across 4 weeks. Stay with me because the reveal in part 2 is not what most people expect. And the science behind why it keeps belly fat stuck is something almost nobody in mainstream nutrition is talking about clearly. Drop a comment right now. Do you check the ingredient label on your cooking oil or the foods you buy regularly? Seed oils, canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil. They are in almost everything. Salad dressings, chips, crackers, bread, mayonnaise, restaurant food, takeout, protein bars, most cooking sprays. And they are marketed as heart healthy, low in saturated fat, the responsible, modern choice. Here is what they are actually doing inside your body. Seed oils have an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of up to 20:1. Your body functions optimally at approximately 4:1. That imbalance does not just slightly affect your health. It drives chronic systemic inflammation at a cellular level. And chronic inflammation is one of the most powerful drivers of visceral fat accumulation that exists. Not through calories, through a specific hormonal and inflammatory cascade that tells your fat cells to hold on and accumulate more. A study published in the British Journal of Nutrition found the following. Populations consuming high omega-6 seed oils showed significantly higher inflammatory markers and visceral fat accumulation, compared to populations using olive oil and butter as their primary cooking fats. Same total fat intake, different fat type, different belly fat outcome. Now here is the part that stops most people when they first understand this, where seed oils are actually hiding. You think you do not use much cooking oil. You barely fry anything. You use olive oil at home. But here is where seed oils are actually entering your body every single day. Restaurants and takeout, almost universally cooked in soybean or canola oil because it is cheap and has a high smoke point. Even upscale restaurants, even salads dressed at the table. Salad dressings. Most commercial dressings use soybean oil as the base even when the label says natural ingredients. Chips and crackers. Almost all use sunflower, canola, or cottonseed oil. Even the ones marketed as baked, organic, or made with real ingredients. Bread and baked goods. Most commercial bread contains soybean or canola oil in the first 5 ingredients. Mayonnaise and spreads. Almost entirely soybean oil. Protein bars and granola. Often contains sunflower or canola oil alongside other marketed healthy ingredients. Plant-based meat alternatives. Heavily reliant on seed oils for texture and cooking properties. Popcorn, frozen meals, sauces, marinades, hummus. Even foods labeled as cooked in olive oil often contain a blend that is primarily canola or soybean with a small percentage of olive oil for the label. A study published in the Journal of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics found the following. Seed oil consumption in American adults was significantly underestimated when self-reported, because of hidden sources in processed and restaurant foods that participants were not aware of. You are consuming far more seed oils than you think. Fix for awareness. Read ingredient labels on everything you buy. If canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, or cottonseed oil appears in the first 5 ingredients, that product is a significant source. Now here is what happens inside your body across 4 weeks when you remove them. And week 2 is when belly fat specifically begins to respond. Week 1, inflammation begins to fall. First week after removing seed oils. Nothing dramatic on the outside. But inside, the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in your cell membranes begins shifting. Your cells are literally made of fat. The type of fat incorporated into your cell membranes determines how inflammatory your cells are. When omega-6 is dominant, cells produce inflammatory compounds called prostaglandins. Prostaglandins activate NF-κB. NF-κB is the master inflammation switch in your body. When NF-κB is active, it turns on genes that directly promote fat storage in visceral fat. Not fat storage in general, Visceral fat specifically, the dangerous fat around your organs. When omega-6 intake drops, prostaglandin production falls. NFK-B activity decreases. The fat storage signal running through that pathway weakens. By the end of week 1, systemic inflammatory markers in your blood begin declining. C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, TNF-alpha, all of them measurably lower. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found the following. Replacing dietary omega-6 seed oils with olive oil produced measurable reductions in inflammatory markers within 1 week of dietary change. 1 week. You will not feel dramatically different yet, but the biology has already shifted, and that shift is the foundation for everything that follows. Week 2. Insulin sensitivity begins improving. Second week after removing seed oils. This connection is one of the least discussed mechanisms in mainstream nutrition. Here is exactly how it works. Omega-6 fatty acids from seed oils are incorporated into cell membranes throughout your entire body, including the membranes of your insulin receptors. When omega-6 is dominant in these membranes, insulin receptor function is impaired. The receptor becomes less fluid, less flexible, less responsive. Your cells respond less efficiently to insulin signals. More insulin is required to clear the same glucose load from your blood. Higher insulin exposure across the day means stronger fat storage signals sent to fat cells, particularly to visceral fat, which has 3 times more cortisol and insulin receptors than fat anywhere else. When seed oil intake drops, the omega-6 composition of cell membranes begins normalizing. Insulin receptor membrane fluidity is restored. Insulin sensitivity improves. The same meals require less insulin to process. Less daily insulin exposure means weaker fat storage signals. More time in fat-burning mode between meals. A study published in the Journal of Lipid Research found the following. Dietary fatty acid composition directly altered insulin receptor membrane fluidity and function. Omega-6 dominance produced measurable insulin resistance compared to balanced omega ratios. By week 2, people who remove seed oils often report that afternoon energy crashes have softened. Not because they changed what they ate, because insulin is not spiking and crashing as dramatically from the same foods. The cells are working more efficiently, and the belly fat is about to start responding. Week 3. Visceral fat begins decreasing third week after removing seed oils. This is when the outside starts catching up with what has been happening inside. 3 specific mechanisms are now converging on visceral fat simultaneously. First, chronic inflammation from omega-6 imbalance was directly promoting visceral fat accumulation through cortisol pathway activation. When NFKB activity fell in week 1, cortisol reactivity fell with it. Less cortisol reactivity means visceral fat receives a weaker continuous storage signal. Second, the improved insulin sensitivity from week 2 means fat cells are now receiving less frequent and less intense instructions to store. The locks on visceral fat are loosening. Third, seed oils themselves may be preferentially stored as visceral fat. Linoleic acid, the primary omega-6 fatty acid in seed oils, accumulates in adipose tissue over time. And the research on how much it has accumulated is striking. A study published in Progress in Lipid Research found the following. Linoleic acid content in human adipose tissue increased from approximately 9% in 1959 to over 21% in 2008. That increase directly parallels the rise in seed oil consumption over the same period. Your body fat is literally made of more seed oil than it was a generation ago. When you stop adding more, the balance begins shifting. By week 3, many people notice their belly feels different, less hard, less protrusive. Clothes fitting differently around the waist before the scale shows dramatic change. The same pattern we see with every intervention that specifically reduces visceral fat. Internal pressure changes before external appearance does. Week 4. The hormonal environment shifts. 4th week after removing seed oils. By now, 3 hormonal systems have shifted measurably from where they were 4 weeks ago. Adiponectin has increased. Adiponectin is a hormone produced by fat cells that improves insulin sensitivity, reduces inflammation, and directly promotes fat oxidation. It is suppressed by chronic omega-6 driven inflammation. When inflammation falls from removing seed oils, adiponectin rises. More adiponectin means faster fat burning and better metabolic function across the board. Leptin sensitivity has improved. Leptin is your body's long-term fat burning signal. It is produced by fat cells and tells your brain it is safe to burn stored fat. Chronic inflammation impairs leptin receptor sensitivity. Your brain stops reading the signal clearly. When inflammation falls, leptin can do its job properly again. Your brain receives accurate signals about fat stores and adjusts fat burning accordingly. Cortisol baseline has lowered. Chronic inflammation and chronic cortisol elevation feed each other in a reinforcing loop. High inflammation triggers cortisol. High cortisol drives more fat storage, which produces more inflammation. Breaking the inflammation cycle by removing seed oils breaks the cortisol loop as well. Lower cortisol baseline means a weaker continuous fat storage signal running in the background of every day. A study published in Nutrients found the following. Replacing seed oils with olive oil for 4 weeks produced measurable improvements in adiponectin levels. Leptin sensitivity improved measurably. Cortisol markers decreased. Visceral fat reductions were observed on body composition measurements. This is the full hormonal picture at 4 weeks, not from eating less, not from exercising more, not from willpower, from removing one ingredient. What to replace seed oils with: practical and simple. For low-heat cooking and salad dressings, extra virgin olive oil. The most researched anti-inflammatory fat with direct evidence for visceral fat reduction. Does not need to be expensive. Regular extra virgin olive oil from any grocery store works. For medium heat cooking, butter or ghee. Saturated fat is chemically stable at cooking temperatures. It does not oxidize into harmful inflammatory compounds the way seed oils do when heated. For high heat cooking, avocado oil, high smoke point. Balanced fatty acid profile, minimal omega-6. For baking, coconut oil or butter. Both are heat stable. Produce far fewer oxidation products than seed oils at baking temperatures. What to look for and avoid on labels. Avoid canola oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, vegetable oil, partially hydrogenated oils. Choose olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, butter, ghee. For processed and packaged foods, if a seed oil appears in the first 5 ingredients, that product is a meaningful source. Find an alternative version or make it at home where possible. The transition does not have to happen overnight. Start with your cooking oil at home. That single swap removes the most controllable and largest direct source. Then gradually work through your most frequently consumed processed foods as you become more aware of where the oils are hiding. Seed oils are not the only cause of belly fat. This is not a claim that one ingredient explains everything, but they are one piece that amplifies everything else. When you are eating well and exercising consistently and belly fat still will not move, chronic low-grade inflammation is often the invisible barrier. Seed oils are one of the most consistent and most overlooked drivers of that inflammation in the modern Western diet. Not because of their calorie content, not because of their fat content in isolation, because of the omega-6 to omega-3 imbalance they create over years of daily consumption. That imbalance activates the NF-κB inflammatory pathway, which directly promotes visceral fat accumulation, which impairs insulin receptor function, which raises insulin exposure across the day, which suppresses adiponectin, which impairs leptin sensitivity, which elevates cortisol baseline. All of these effects working simultaneously from one ingredient consumed multiple times per day across years. Removing them does not guarantee fat loss, but it removes a biological barrier that has been quietly working against every other effort you make. When that barrier is gone, the other things you are doing start producing the results they should have been producing all along. Go to your kitchen right now. Not after this video. Right now. Look at your cooking oil. Turn it over. Read the label. If it says canola, soybean, sunflower, corn, or vegetable oil, you have just identified one of the most significant sources of chronic inflammation in your daily diet. It has been there every day, cooking your food, slowly building the omega-6 imbalance that has been keeping belly fat locked in place. Not through calories, through biology you were never told about. Replace it with olive oil, avocado oil, or butter this week. Just that one swap, nothing else. See what happens across the next 4 weeks. Come back and tell me what changed. Which part of this surprised you most? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. If this changed how you see the oils in your kitchen and their connection to your belly fat, subscribe to What Science Reveals. Real science explained clearly every single week. And if you want to see how gut health habits and cooking habits connect to everything we covered today, those videos are right here. See you in the next one.